We are a couple of minutes late, but we'll get going now. I'm really happy to introduce Dr. Eliana Elkhoury from Athabasca in Canada, Athabasca University. She's an assistant professor there. She's also the team leader of the Alternative Assessment Project, and I think that's what she's going to talk about today. She's going to talk on the topic of alternative assessments, examples and champions, and this is obviously a continuation of our current theme that we're running on assessment, particularly authentic assessment, but alternative assessment and other forms of assessment. That's a big driver for us at the moment. But before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge the land we meet on today is the traditional lands for the Kaurna people. These are the people of the Adelaide Plains, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as traditional custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still as important to the living Kaurna people today. So, without further ado, I'll hand over to Dr. Eliana Elkhoury. Thanks very much for being there, Eliana. I've made you a co-host.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and good morning. Thank you for joining us. Before you remove the picture of the acknowledgement, I would also like to acknowledge that I am in Southern Ontario in Canada on the land of the imminent, and I would like to thank them for having us on their land. I will share my screen now. Are you able to see my screen?
No, it says that you've started sharing, but it actually hasn't appeared. Oh, there it is. Yep.
Okay, so I am excited to be with you today and to talk about the Alternative Assessment Project that I am leading. And we're going to talk about, I'm going to give you an introduction about my work and what I mean by alternative assessment. And then I'm going to give you a few examples of things that we're working on and our project and what the next steps are. So where did this project start? Almost 3 years ago, I had a small task of finding a few alternative assessments to help instructors while they move to remote emergency learning. And I went into a rabbit hole, and it took me 4 months, and I fell in love with alternative assessment. And what I found was that people are doing amazing stuff, but we just don't know about them. And also people want to do amazing stuff, but they don't have the tools. So when I was researching, I found that I found very interesting stuff, but they were on blogs or they were in long papers, and sometimes people don't have time to read them. And also when I started talking to people, they said, oh, we want to do different assessment, but we are not sure how to do it or where to do it, where to start. So I created a guide of 35 alternative assessment, which led to a larger project. And now what we're working on is the first part is equity in assessment. And I'm working with 2 educational developers from York University, and we developed a MOOC, and we offered it at the university about what does it mean to be equitable in assessment. The second thing is I'm doing a research on institutional approaches to reimagining assessment. And there are a lot of institutions that I spoke to or chatted with or read about, and they're doing institutional ways of rethinking assessment. And I'm researching that in order to understand where does that start and what is the goal and how they are working with accrediting bodies. The third thing is a social media campaign, and I'm going to give you a lot of examples from that. What I noticed is that we need more accessible ways of knowing what different types of assessments are out there. So I sent a call to instructors all over the world to participate in a social media campaign. And I asked people to prepare a short video. It could be up to 2 minutes or even more about a reimagined assessment that they are using in the classroom. And I received responses from 120 educators from different disciplines, all in higher education, and they are all doing amazing stuff. Every time I met with one of them, I was more energized and more enthusiastic about the project. I will give you links to this social media campaign. We put it on Twitter, we put it on YouTube and on LinkedIn, and people showed us what they've been doing. And I noticed also that we needed a community, so people to talk with about alternative assessment, people to discuss ideas, because people are doing this and they wanted questions, they had questions and they wanted to ask other people about it. I'm sorry, did somebody try to say something? Oh, or maybe it was by accident. The third one is a project I'm working on, and it's called Anti-Racist Assessment. We have a chapter coming out soon about this, and we had a lot of questions about inclusive assessment and equitable assessment and anti-racist assessment. And my colleague and I were working on the notion of anti-racist assessment. And what we mean by anti-racist assessment is an assessment that acknowledges that racism exists in assessment, and at the same time, it seeks to empower all the students. Hopefully, the chapter will be out soon, and you can read it. I also have research assistants to work on alternative assessment in the multiple disciplines, because people in different disciplines, and I'm sure you're aware of this, do alternative assessment in different ways, or they do assessment in different ways. So I have a research assistant researching alternative assessment in engineering, another research assistant working on alternative assessment in STEM disciplines, and a person working on arts-based assessment, and social science and humanities. We want to see what different people are doing in the different disciplines, and then we're going to compare all of these and find common things and what we can learn from these experiences of people working in different disciplines. We have a project on, like, the UN has a roadmap for post-pandemic assessment, and we want to investigate the contextual understanding of assessment and what people have done in the last 2 years. Something that came up was quality assurance. So we have these established systems of exams and accreditation, and we know, or we think we know, that they follow quality assurance. So at the same time, the question is here, if we are using alternative assessment, how do we guarantee that we have quality assurance? How do we guarantee that we are really measuring learning and we are supporting our students? Now we're doing a systematic review, and we're going to publish this because before we start any work, we wanted to see what people are doing and publishing. We are looking at the literature at the same time at the gray literature. We are also doing a landscape study to see what people are doing in relation to assessment, and at the same time, their beliefs about their assessment, the culture of assessment that exists in different institutes. The last thing that we are working on is academic integrity and alternative assessment. I'm sure you hear a lot of talks about how do I make sure that there's academic integrity in my courses? How do I make sure that my students are not cheating? And the argument here is that we need to design different ways of doing assessment. And this will guarantee that we have academic integrity in our courses. So enough about all of these ideas. Let's start talking about examples and champions of alternative assessment. And as I mentioned, this is coming out of the project, that the social media campaign that we had. This is when we first started, when we sent the call and we received responses from all over the world. This has been updated to 120 submissions. So the first thing that I want to talk about is, what do I mean by alternative assessment? It's a way of thinking about assessment, about the design, the implementation, the feedback, and the grading. So the whole process of assessing students. It includes assessment as learning, for learning, and of learning. And at the same time, it includes formative assessment and summative assessment. So all the things that we talk about, the product and the process of assessment. How do we know that our students have learned? How do we help our students demonstrate their learning? How do we give them the choice to tell us that they have demonstrated their learning and give them the proper feedback and give them the proper grading? This is the 10 principles of alternative assessment, and it's in one chapter that has been published. And here, what I did is I compared different types of assessment to see what is common between them. And what I found is that first, alternative assessment has different forms, and it takes different shapes other than the traditional assessment, which is the essay and the exam and the multiple choice assessment. Also, alternative assessment is authentic, and I'm sure many of you are aware of this concept of authentic assessment. But also, alternative assessment is equitable to all our students. So how do we make sure that all our students are learning? How do we make sure that, in addition to being accessible, our alternative assessment is equitable, for example, to minority students, to students whose English is their foreign language or English is their second language? How do I make sure that my assessment is measuring their learning? Alternative assessment is flexible, it is renewable, and I'm going to give you examples about this. It's not an assessment that I just do for my course and it ends and nobody reads it except for the instructor. It's renewable, it's out there, and multiple people have access to it. It is interdisciplinary. So how do I create assessment that measures learning across disciplines? It is co-created with my students and it's co-created with my other colleagues. It is continuous. It is culturally responsive, and most importantly, it's engaging. And this is, I'm seeing a lot of conversations about this now. It's how do I create engagement? How do I create belonging? How do I create compassion? And we will talk more about this. So yes, alternative assessment, I mentioned compassion. There's a lot of work being done on belonging and compassion in assessment from the UK. I know Vicky Hill is doing work in London's Arts School, London Arts University. I'm sorry if I'm messing up the name, but they're doing a lot of work. I will share the presentation with you and you can see the link. They have a presentation on this in a few days. So how does assessment help students feel that they belong instead of alienating students and making them feel that they are on the periphery or that they don't belong? I have presenters who submitted on trust, and how do we make sure that our students trust us? Because this is also a recurring conversation, is that students, we tell them that we're going to use different types of assessment, but we see that they don't trust that we're going to grade them accordingly, or that we are going to be, we say that we give them choice, but sometimes they don't trust us in this. So alternative assessment, we seek to create this trust with our students. We seek to create more engagement. We seek to make the learning visible. And also it's also related to mental health. There's a lot of research that shows that exams and essays are stressful, and this is something also related to academic integrity. So students are under stress, and this is why sometimes they hire contracts to do their essays for them. So there's a relationship between assessment and mental health, and using alternative assessment where students have choice and flexibility and engagement increases mental health and makes students feel that they belong. Also, assessment is about different types of grading. You will see, I'll give you examples about what people have used in different schemes of grading and ungrading sometimes. It's also different work on feedback. How do we provide good feedback, unbiased feedback, and constructive feedback? So basically, there's a lot out there, and this is what I found when I started working on this three years ago, is that there's a lot, but they are all over the place. There's no one place where we can go and be like, I need to see different types of assessment. I need to see different types of feedback or different types of grading and get examples. And what I wanted to do with this project is I wanted to create this repertoire where I put all the case studies, I put examples, contacts, and people can go in and see, I want to do different types of grading, what exists out there, and who is doing what, and they can contact them, and they can ask them questions, or there is a community where they can ask questions. So you will see that some of the things that we argue about is that assessment needs to reflect the world we live in. It's not only teaching and learning need to reflect the world we live in, also assessment, because this will equip our students for their work. It will equip our students for their future. There's also something that works and something that works best for assessment. And sometimes doing an exam works, but doing an alternative assessment would work better. And it would engage our students and make it fun for us to grade and fun for them to do the assessment. And also thinking about what evidence are we collecting as educators? Are we collecting information of what our students have memorized, or are we collecting information of how our students make sense of the things we are teaching them? So these are things to think about when we are talking about alternative assessment. Now, let's move to some examples, which is the more exciting part of this presentation. So the first one is a e-portfolio. I decided to start with this because it's something that more or less a lot of people have heard about, and it's there's a big movement on e-portfolios. There's a lot of universities that have been using this. So what is it? For those of you who don't know, it's a collection, it's a digital collection of artifacts that they could be assignments, they could be pictures, they could be even essays, videos, podcasts, anything that students choose. The most important thing that we are measuring here is how students are making connections. And I'm going to give you an example here, and it's from Athabasca University. For our master's program, students can choose to do an e-portfolio at the end of their program, and instead of a thesis. And in that e-portfolio, they get to choose 5 artifacts that could be related to their courses. They could be related to their volunteer work. It could be related to something, a professional development experience that they have taken, and then make connections through that. What they do is they create this e-portfolio, and then they do an oral presentation. This is an example that I really admire about e-portfolios, and I've seen it done also in courses. You can ask your students to choose the artifacts that they want and to reflect on them. There's a lot of resources out there about how to do reflection and how to grade reflection. And as I mentioned, you can grade the portfolio itself, or you can grade an oral presentation at the end. What I've seen being done at Athabasca is that there's this oral presentation, but also there's questions at the end of the oral presentation. And students are asked questions, and then they have to answer these questions and present their ideas and present their understanding. Of course, the e-portfolio is not something that happens overnight. It's not something that they prepare in one day. They spend the whole semester preparing. So if you are teaching them a course about biology, I have one of the champions who asked her students to submit a portfolio about biology, and they prepare this portfolio throughout the semester, and then they put it online, and they get the grade at the end. That's the first example. The second one I chose is a renewable assessment. And here I want to share an example we had at York University in my previous employment. We prepared a panel of students. We asked them to come in and to tell us about their assessment experience. and what was one of their most memorable assessment. And the students said that the assessment that they appreciated most was creating a Wikipedia page, because the Wikipedia page was something that stayed online. And also it was not only for the instructor, it was something that was public. And I think this is an example of renewable assessment and its benefits, is that it prepares the students to have a public-facing content, and it prepares them to create for a different public, and it helps them. They know that what they're creating is still out there, and then they can go back to it, and then they can see it, they can add to it, they can modify it. Here I have different examples: the Wikipedia assignment, the case studies, course auxiliary materials, and I will show you more examples about these. For example, what can students do with a Wikipedia page? You can ask them to copy edit a Wikipedia page. If you are teaching them, for example, a language course, or if you are teaching them a second language course. Let's say students are learning Italian or they are learning French. They can go into a Wikipedia page written in French and they can copy edit that. They can submit a report about the original page and how they copy edited and explain their process. You can ask your students to create definitions. For example, if you are teaching them science, or if you are teaching them a business, they can go in and see a certain concept and create definitions and add it to a Wikipedia page. They can do an analysis report. You can ask them about a certain topic. They can create a report analyzing the topic. They can translate a Wikipedia page. They can create illustrations. For example, if you have students doing studying graphic designs, you can ask them to create illustrations for articles that are missing some. Another example is writing case studies, and this is popular in business courses and also in medical courses. So there's cases, I've seen some that are 60 pages or 50 pages or 30 pages. And here, the example that exists here at the University of British Columbia, instructors run a workshop to train the students to write cases, and then students go in and write cases and they put them online. Oh, this is an example that I wanted to share with you, and this is very current. I'm going to open this, and you can see that here Wikipedia has a call now. I don't know if can you see this page, the Wikipedia page? Yes, okay. So here you can see that if you apply for spring 2022, apply by July 29, and Wikipedia will give you support to use Wikipedia as assessment in the fall 2022 term. So here they explain how Wikipedia student program works and how they can give you support and how they help the students write Wikipedia articles. So this is something that you might want to consider. Let me go back to my presentation. Okay, here's another example from, and it's also about renewable assessment. And here, Dr. Celia Popovich from York University, what she does is she created a website where students, they go and read books and they have to submit their book reviews and put them on that website. There's a lot to talk about there, about which authors they choose. There's another instructor at Athabasca University. Also, what he did, he's retired now, what he did is he asked the students to choose Canadian authors and to give visibility to these authors. So the students would go in and choose authors that don't have pages, or sometimes they are not well known to other students, and they create these book reviews about them, and then they put them on this website. So that website was Canadian Authors. Now, another example is social media assessment, and I've seen people use a Twitter assignment. I worked with one instructor to create a Twitter assignment. Other people have been using TikTok and a professional learning network. This is something that I use in my classes, and I'm going to tell you more about it. Of course, the benefits are being concise, expanding the learning beyond the classroom, and helping the students exist in the public space. Here, I like to add this page because I found it interesting that for the continuing medical education in the US and in Canada, when medical professionals apply for continuing medical education credits, they can apply for social media learning. So they can summarize the learning that they did on Twitter, for example, or on any social media. There's Twitter journal clubs. They can summarize that and they can get credit for. Why I'm using this is that because I get arguments about quality assurance, and I get arguments about how do we know that students have learned. And this is where I put this example, because we are acknowledging that medical professionals are learning through Twitter, and we are giving them credit for that. So what can we learn from this experience to help our students who are on social media, maybe not on Twitter, maybe on something else, but they are on social media and they are learning from it. And I'm learning from it all the time. So how do we use that knowledge to assess our students and to make it fun for them too? So what I do, as in a professional learning network, I ask my students at the beginning of the semester that they need to create their professional learning network. So they need to go and follow 10 people, and they need to tell me who they followed online and why. And this is something I also use with my graduate students. With my PhD students, I tell them when they first start the program that they need to build their learning network. And I ask them to go and look at the things they are interested in, find the people that write about these things online, and follow them, and then come and tell me who are these people and what they are posting, which conferences they are posting in. So students, when they form this, I am also helping them build their network. So when they graduate, after they're done with my courses and they're done with the program, they still have this network and they can still do this learning. So a Twitter assignment is something else that I've seen being used. There's a lot of things that instructors can do. You can see here that one thing that I like is the events in literary and popular culture. And here, because alternative assessment needs to be contextual, it's something that is, how do students make sense of this learning? And there's a lot of things happening around them. So if I can make sure that my students are understanding what I'm teaching them, and then they can make connection to events in popular culture, then I am sure that my students are learning and they can make sense of that learning. So some people, how to grade these assignments, the social media, some people use a holistic assessment. So they count the number of tweets, they count the quality, they check the quality, the relevance, the role. I like to ask the students to reflect on their tweets and on the feedback that they get from their tweets and what they learned from that. This is what I use to grade. Another example is a multimodal assessment, and here what I've seen done is I've seen instructors ask the students to choose how they would like their assessment, how they would like to submit an assessment. Also, some instructors find it a little bit harder or maybe challenging to open it up. So sometimes they give their students 3 types of assessment that the students can choose from. And multimodal assessment could be a podcast, a digital book. Here, there's a very interesting champion who submitted, who said that she wants the students to create a podcast at the end. But in order to get to there, and in order to make sure that they make or create a good podcast, the first step is she asked them to listen to 3 podcasts and then submit the strengths and the weaknesses of these podcasts. And she presents a scaffolded assignment where students have to give an outline and then give a draft, and then they give it to their colleagues and they give feedback. And so it's a scaffolded assignment. They don't present the podcast at the end. Students can create a podcast in a foreign language. They can use a podcast to interview an expert. And here there's an interesting model, which is called the hub and spoke model. I've seen it done in podcasts and in other types, where the instructor creates the page for all the students to put their input in. So the instructor can create a podcast for the course, and for example, every episode is done by a student, and in every episode they interview an expert. And this is where the hub is, and everything is there. And then students who come in later versions of the course, in later years, they can also listen to these podcast episodes. I also mentioned the example of digital books. I am now working with a group of students because we also want to hear from them. It's not about only from the instructors. And I know that one student decided to create a digital book for her assignment, and it was a children's book. So this is also coming up in the social media campaign. So you can ask your students to do mini textbooks, to do book reports, to do a year in review book, so talking about special people, about turning points that happened in that year, and of course link it to your course. Creating children's books, as I said, guidebooks, how-to books, and also collections. So this is something that I also find interesting, where students curate their favorite books, their favorite movies, their favorite quotes, and then they link it to the course material, and they say why these are important. This is something that I've seen done in education, because there's a lot of books out there, and then when students are interested in one topic, I have one student who created a collection of indigenous material for the course, for education. So there are free ebook creators that students can use to create, and some of them are also apps. So if they are using their tablets or their phones, they can also use them to create the digital books. Artificial intelligence. This is an article that came out maybe less than a month ago, and Mike Sharples talks about artificial intelligence and how they are able to create essays now, and Turnitin or plagiarism softwares are not able to detect that these are done, or because there's no plagiarism there, so they're not able to detect that these are not written by the students. And in this blog post, he discusses different ideas of what to do for that. And one of the things is you can ask your students to use an artificial intelligence tool to create an essay, and then you ask the students to go in and critique that essay and detect what's happening there. So instead of worrying about AI creating an essay, you can use that and ask the students to learn from that. So I had submissions of instructors talking about students as partners, and this is an amazing experience where instructors ask students to write the exam questions. For example, here I've seen they asked all the class to write exam questions, and then told them that I will choose 5 of these questions. So the exam questions were in a on a website where everybody could go in and see them. And the instructor chose 5, so students were engaged in looking at these. Another example is collaborative annotation of reading. And here I have Tab, who presented an idea. He's one of the champions and talked about how he grades students and how he grades the collaborative annotation of reading. So he puts one text and asks the students to collaboratively annotate on that and then reflect on the annotation. This is an example of a debate where Lauren asked her students to choose one of 6 movies and then debate whether who has ethics in that movie or not, who is applying ethics or not. Virtual escape rooms, and this is a law course where there was the instructor created, and she presents, she has also a YouTube video about how to create these virtual escape rooms. Concept maps, and this is, I usually start with concept map because it's easy and there's a lot to be done. There's timelines, there's concept mapping, mind mapping, and digital humanities. They've done a lot of things. They use networking software, and so people to use these digital tools to create visualization. And this is, you can also assess your students using these. I'm wrapping up here because I know that our time is almost up. Some of the advice that I learned through experience and through working with other instructors is start small. If you want to change your assessment, choose one thing to do and then try it, collect feedback. If you are able to do so, please co-design with a colleague because exchange of ideas is really important. Establish multiple check-ins with your students. Ask them, is this going well? Do you have any feedback for me? What's happening? And when you are using your assessment, and then come back and see what's happening. I know some of you are asking, what if I have a large classroom? And this is also something that you will find on our website. It's Professor Merv, what he did, I worked with him, and he changed his whole classroom. He had almost, I think, 700 students in his kinesiology class, and he removed all the exams and the multiple choice tests, and he did alternative assessment. Exit on the left in the direction of travel. Okay, so what's next? We have the Champions campaign. If you want to be one of the champions, please reach out. We are working on hearing from the students. We have an Alternative Assessment Institute in September, and it's a virtual free institute. I will put a form in the chat. If you would like to stay up to date and know what's happening, you can fill out that form and I will add you to the list. We have workshops and research following those workshops. So if you are interested in participating in one workshop and then applying that alternative assessment in your classroom and doing research on that, I would love to collaborate with you. So thank you so much. I will put the link to the form in the chat. This is my email if you would like to reach out to me. We also have a LinkedIn and a Twitter if you would like to follow us. We have our website that explains all the work and all the resources we've put in there. And I would love to chat with you more if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Eliana. That was really interesting. I think everyone's really appreciative of your time, and it is a bit difficult to tell on Zoom sometimes. Okay, we have a couple of questions if you're okay if we ask questions. Let me just have a look at the chat.
And I put the form in the chat. Please feel free to fill it if you would like to be in touch.
Okay, thanks very much. And I'll be obviously sending out all of these resources and the recording to everybody who's registered. So where are we? Eileen asked, how do you grade the writing exam question assessment?
Yes. So there's usually what I find is that people have rubrics and they can determine if the question is good based on the rubric. Another instructor I know asked the students to also provide answers to the questions. So it's not only a question that students throw out there, it's a question with answers. And this is how the instructor knows whether the question is based on understanding of the course material or not.
Okay, Aki asks, what criteria will be able to be put onto these creations of social media? So I guess what criteria do you use to assess the social media from students?
Yes, so there's, I know I'm going to give you a lot of examples, because what I always argue for is that this is something that you are an expert in and you need to make it yours. So I give you examples and you can choose something that works for you. I know one instructor, what he did is he did just a complete and incomplete. So people who submitted something, then they get that complete grade. And as I mentioned at the beginning, usually people who use alternative assessment, they usually also might experiment with alternative grading. So I've seen people use a rubric with one entry or a mastery-based rubric. So accomplished or not accomplished, satisfying or, sorry, not accomplished or not accomplished. And then they say that this is accomplished or not. I've seen people who add an element to creativity, who add an element to depth. So there's a lot of rubrics, and this is something that you will find on the website. There's rubrics for social media submissions, and there's rubrics that indicate whether students have followed what you need or not, and then you can grade them based on that.
Okay, thanks. Tracy Coleman asks, can you expand on belonging?
Yes, okay. So this is a big topic, and I am not particularly the expert on that. I'm going to put the name of Vicky, and they have a lot of work on that, and I would recommend that you see what they're doing, because when I want to learn about that, I usually go and see what they are doing. Here's a link for something that they are doing in a couple of days.
Thank you. There is a couple more, if that's okay. Margaret asks, are there any program-wide versus for specific assessment, or one course that shows not only fun but authentic to profession? Sorry, probably read that quite wrong. Are there program-wide courses? Margaret, could you possibly
that question? It's probably easier. So what I'm interested in, I've obviously Stuart will be aware when we did e-portfolios, and I've done things in specific one course, but I'm now moving to the only way to actually have change on the big scale would be to look across a whole program, so multiple years working with multiple course coordinators. So, and it to be building something that the profession is, able to see this is a skill that our students need, rather than it's fun. I mean, obviously, if you can have fun and it's authentic and it's something across the whole program. So I know the literature is full of lots of one small scale examples, but have you got examples I'll be interested in that go across more than one course that have reached that scale?
Not yet, but this is something that we are going to look at in the next step of our work. So hopefully you will hear from us.
Thanks.
There's an invitation for you to join up to the alternative assessment network,
yes.
Margaret. Darlene Archer asks, have you used wiki pages?
Have I used wiki?
Yes.
Pages?
Okay.
No.
Right, as part of alternative assessment. Okay. Joanne asks, do you have any research related to alternative assessment in mathematics courses?
Yes, and we are doing a presentation on the 21st or the 22nd on that in the UK. There's a whole conference about. I will send the link to Stuart, and he can put that in. The link to that conference, and I'm working actually with a mathematics instructor to work on alternative assessment in mathematics specifically.
Thanks, Eliana. I have one as well, a question, if that's okay.
Yes.
Increasingly seeing video use, instructors asking people to submit videos as part of their assessment. And so I don't think it's necessarily well done or well constructed. Do you have any thoughts on getting students to submit videos or multimedia as part of their assessment, an alternative assessment?
Yes, so this is something that I use. I usually allow my students to choose how they want to submit. And of course, not surprisingly, I have people who still choose the essay, which is totally okay. And I have people who choose the video. And one thing that I note is that the video does not need to be fancy, because I'm not grading them on the video, I'm grading them on the content. So one advice that I have, if you want your students to, if you are looking to teach your students digital skills and how to create the video and how to make fancy videos, so you can include this, please include resources for them to consult. And I've seen instructors assign an hour where they tell the students about good or weaknesses or strength. And also, similar to the podcast, you can ask them to look at 2 or 3 videos and analyze them, critique them, and come up with their list of best practices, and then apply that in their videos. Related to length, I ask my students not to make something longer than 7 minutes or 10 minutes maximum, because it's a lot of work to actually create content for 10 minutes. So if they want to talk for 10 minutes, yes, and summarize something there. So in relation to time, this is what I ask them to do. And they actually struggle to do that too. So
yeah, it's quite a long time. And David Wilson is saying in the chat that in medicine, we use video for patient handover and for patient info and curated web links, and we use 5 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's made a video knows 5 minutes is a long time in the world of making videos. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, well, I don't think there's any more questions, unless anyone else has a last quick question for Eliana. Now's the time. If not, I'd like to extend a huge thank you to you for speaking to us all the way from Canada and making the time. And actually, the times did kind of line up, because I think it's early evening for you there, and we're all about to start our work day. So thank you very much for your time, Eliana. We really appreciate you being there. And thank you for everybody for getting up this morning and coming along. It's great to see you as ever. And we'll see you soon. And I'll be sending out a recording to this session and the links to Eliana's Alternative Assessment Network and any other resources that she sends me. And we'll see you next time. Thanks very much, everybody. Have a fantastic day today.
Have a good day.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.